Now, how to do valuation? Let me give you the good news. And what is the good news? Good news is पूरी दुनिया में there are only three approaches of doing valuation. Only three approaches. You go to America, you go to Russia, you go to Europe, you go to Australia, you go to New Zealand, you go to Japan, you go to China, you go to any part of the world. There are only three approaches for doing the valuation. And please remember, it doesn't really matter as to what class of asset that we are talking about. We are talking about the land and building, we are talking about the plant and machinery, we are talking about the financial assets, we are talking about the intangible assets, we are talking about the goodwill, we are talking about the derivatives. It doesn't really matter. There are only three approaches for the purpose of valuation. And that is the good news because we do not have to struggle too much for coming to the valuation. Now, which are the three approaches that you have for the valuation? The first approach is income approach. Second approach is the market approach, and the third approach is the asset approach. Now, let's understand that also. Why income approach is known as income approach? Why market approach is known as market approach? Why the cost approach or the asset approach is known as the cost or the asset approach? Very simple. When you are doing valuation of an asset using income as the base information, that is where you are using the income approach. When you are using for doing valuation of any asset, when you are using income as the base information for the purpose of finding out the value, that is your income approach. So likewise, when you are using market information as the basis for the purpose for arriving at the value, that is referred as market approach. And the asset or the cost approach, when you are using the cost of the asset as the basis for the purpose of valuation, that is known as asset approach or the cost approach. Under the income approach, there are three methods. One is income capitalization and second is discounted cash flow method. Now let me tell you, when it comes to the insolvency resolution process, income capitalization method is not used. What is used is the discounted cash flow method. And I can tell you, based on my experience of valuation of last so many years, in discounted cash flow method is the most efficient, effective, dependable, reliable method of cash flow, method of valuation. You only need to take two precautions. What are those two precautions? Precaution number one, make sure that the projected cash flows that you are making are as realistic as possible. As realistic as possible. Don't make too much optimism and don't bring too much of pessimism. In both the cases, you will be arriving at wrong values. So cash flow projections that you are making got to be absolutely realistic. Meaning what? Meaning when you as an insolvency professional are appointing someone as registered valuer, that valuer with input from you in coordination with you got to ensure that the cash flow projections that he takes into account for the purpose of discounted cash flow method are as realistic as possible. So that's number one. Second precaution that needs to be taken is about the cost of capital. Cost of capital that you would use for the purpose of discounting the cash flows. So that cost of capital again has to incorporate the risk and return into it. So अगर रिस्क बहुत ज़्यादा है तो आपकी कॉस्ट ऑफ कैपिटल ज़्यादा होगी. अगर रिस्क कम है तो फिर आपकी कॉस्ट ऑफ कैपिटल भी कम होगी, बिकॉज देयर इज अ डायरेक्ट रिलेशनशिप बिटवीन द रिस्क and the cost of capital. So these two things need to be taken care of, and when you do that, I think everything should be fine. Market approach, now in my view, for the insolvency resolution purposes, market approach is not of much relevance. And why it is not of much relevance? Because market approach का मतलब है comparable company method और comparable transaction method. अब आप मुझे बताइए कि जिस कंपनी का इंसॉल्वेंसी रेजोल्यूशन का काम आपको मिला है वो उसके जैसी कंपनी कंपेरेबल आपको कहीं मिलेगी क्या? इट इज़ next to impossible that you will find a company which is similar to your company. So, and same is the case with the comparable transactions also. And therefore, for the purpose of, in my understanding, for the purpose of insolvency resolution process, market approach may not be of much relevance. Not that I am completely ruling it out. You can always, make some efforts in case something you are able to get. But invariably, it will not happen. So, आपका focus कहाँ होना चाहिए? Discounted cash flow पे. And then you have the asset approach. Now here you have the liquidation value method. अब देखो, जब insolvency IBA के जो regulations हैं उसके हिसाब से we need to appoint two valuers to give two values, fair value and the liquidation value. So what is the liquidation value? Liquidation value is कि अगर ये कंपनी नहीं चलने वाली है, इस कंपनी को बंद करना पड़ेगा, बंद करके इस कंपनी की एसेट्स को सेल करना पड़ेगा, और सेल करके जो पैसा आएगा उसमें से जो सेल करने में खर्चा होगा वो माइनस करने के बाद जो आपके हाथ में आएगा, दैट इज योर लिक्विडेशन वैल्यू. दैट इज योर लिक्विडेशन वैल्यू. So under the insolvency resolution process, so these are the methods which are used for the purpose of finding value. Just to give you some more input about the, okay, in case if you have any question, you can please ask me.